So you want to know what is the best lighting and filtration for your shrimp tank. But in this video, I'm going to tell you. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Richard and I'm the author of the Neocaridina Shrimp Handbook. So let's start by looking at lighting and answering the question, do shrimp need a light? And the answer to that question quite simply is no. The shrimp themselves do not care whether or not they have light in their aquarium. They will do just as well and be just as happy if I didn't have any lights here at all. However, having a light does allow us aquarists, A, to be able to see and enjoy our shrimp, and B, it allows us to grow live plants, to create these more natural looking environments. So on the face of it, the answer is no, they don't need a light. But in reality, for us to be able to enjoy our hobby, for us to be able to enjoy our shrimp, then yeah, a light is pretty much essential. The next question has to be, what sort of light should I get? Well, that very much depends on your situation. Now here I have my dedicated shrimp room, and a lot of these tanks are just lit by these cheap LED floodlights, the kind of thing you get from a DIY or a hardware store. They don't look pretty, but they do the job. They're cheap to buy, they're cheap to run, the shrimp look amazing, and the light they give off is suitable for, in my experience, the vast majority of plants we keep in our shrimp rooms. Now that's all very well in a shrimp room, but if the aquarium were in my house, or in my living room, or my kitchen, or somewhere like that, then I certainly wouldn't want one of these cheap floodlights. They don't look very nice at all. I would want something more like I have on this 20-gallon tank here, which brings us nicely onto the sponsor of today's video. This light is the Haiger 24/7 Auto On-Off. Haiger are one of the world's leading manufacturers of aquarium equipment, including lights and filters and wave makers and air pumps and pretty much just about everything you need for your aquarium, Haiger make it. Not only do the plants, the shrimp and the fish look amazing under this light, but the light itself has a programmable controller. You can set what time of day it comes on and goes off, and not only that, but it has a sunrise and sunset feature, meaning in the morning the light ramps up and in the evening it slowly winds down, giving the appearance of a sunset. If you're looking for a light for your fish or shrimp tank that looks great and comes in on budget, then why not check out the Haiger 24/7? I'll put a link in the description, and thank you very much Haiger for sponsoring today's video. So once you've decided which light you need for your shrimp tank, the next thing you're going to need to know is how long should it run for? Now this is very much a personal choice. For me, I like to run my lights for between 8 and 10 hours, depending on which tank it is. In my experience, that gives me ideal growth without creating too much algae. If we have too much light, if we leave our lights on for too long, then typically after about 10 or more hours, we end up just feeding the algae. The plants themselves can only photosynthesize for between 10 and 12 hours maximum, then they typically stop and the algae will take over. Any shrimp tank that has the lights on for too long will eventually become a big algae mess. And whilst you've heard me say many times before, I don't fear algae, I encourage algae in my tanks, I don't want the entire tank to be absolutely covered in it. This tank here that needs stripping down and did have my pea puffers in it has become an absolute blackbeard algae mess. In the next few days, I'm going to have to tear that tank down, clear it all out and start afresh. So if you run your lights for too long, you do run the risk of creating either green water or a mass of algae in your tanks. So in an ideal world, you want to attach your light to a timer and have it come on for a set number of hours each day. Start with 7 or 8 hours, see how your plants do, see how your shrimp fare. You can always increase it. Of course, the other thing you can do when it comes to having your lights running is set them to what's known as the siesta method. Instead of the lights being on for hours when you're out the house, you could have them set to come on for a few hours in the morning, then you perhaps go off to work, and then you have them set to come back on when you return from work. So maybe they're on for 2 hours in the morning, 6 hours in the evening, giving you 8 hours in total, but meaning you get to enjoy it at both ends of your day. So with lights covered, let's take a look at filtration. I think filtration is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of shrimp keeping. There are many, many different types of filter. You can run a sponge filter, an under gravel filter, a hang on back, a canister, an internal power filter. There are lots of different types of filters, and they all have their pros and their cons. Essentially, they all do two jobs. One, to keep the water crystal clear by physically filtering the water, by physically filtering out debris and particles from the water. And two, biological filtration. they convert the waste from our fish and our shrimp from the highly toxic ammonia through to the far less toxic nitrates. Now, how they do that with the beneficial bacteria, that's for another video. But suffice to say, having a filter does make shrimp keeping much easier. Now, you don't have to have a filter. You can run a shrimp tank very successfully without a filter. And that's because the beneficial bacteria actually coat all surfaces equally in the aquarium. Whether it's the gravel, the sides of the glass, the plant leaves, or the media in the filter, the bacteria colonize all surfaces more or less equally, meaning providing we are cautious and we don't overfeed our shrimp, we can get away with not having a filter. But having a filter does make life much easier. So what's the best filter to use? Well, I don't think anybody will doubt when it comes to shrimp keeping, a sponge filter is the best filter. They're super cheap. They rarely go wrong because there are no moving parts, although you do have to have an air pump, obviously, to drive the filter. And most importantly of all, there's no motor. There's no impeller to suck your shrimp in and unfortunately to kill them. If you run a hang-on back filter or a canister filter, then you do need to ensure you put a sponge over the intake, because those filters have an intake to draw in the water. And those intakes are fabulous. They typically have a strainer over that stops fish getting sucked in, but those strainers will do absolutely nothing to stop shrimp, and especially baby shrimp, from being sucked in into the motor, where they typically perish. Now, going back to this 20-gallon tank I've got here, I'm actually running the Haiger hang-on back filter on that tank. And the only modification I made from the box for that filter was I put a fine intake sponge over the strainer. Now, this filter does come with an intake sponge, but it's a coarse sponge and my baby shrimp will get sucked through that. So that's the only upgrade I made there. Now, I did say a filter has two jobs, which is to keep the water physically clear of debris and to keep it biologically clear, but it actually does have a third job, which is to circulate the water evenly throughout the aquarium. And circulation is essential whether or not you run a filter. In the bowl down here and the small vase I have down here that don't run filters, they still run an air stone for circulation. And water circulation is crucial for an even temperature throughout the tank. It's crucial for an even spread of nutrients if you're fertilizing your plants. And it's also really important to prevent dead spots. Dead spots in the aquarium are where food and fish poop and debris can gather, where they will slowly rot. Having good circulation prevents dead spots, which means you're far less likely to suffer from an ammonia spike because of a buildup of debris and detritus and uneaten fish food, etc., in one corner of your tank or behind a rock or a piece of wood. Now, in this fish room, I pretty much run all types of filter. Sponge filter, hang-on back filter, hang-on canister. I've got under gravel down here. I'm running a tank with no filter down here. And in the house, I've got a couple of canister filters running. It essentially is different horses for different courses. Pick the right filter for the job. If in doubt, go for a sponge filter. And if you do go for a hang-on back or a canister filter, make sure you put a sponge over the intake to prevent the shrimp getting sucked in. Now, if you want to see how I went about setting up this tank down here, doesn't have a filter at all, I'll link to the video just here. And if you want to watch the rest of the Shrimp Keeping Basics playlist, I'll link to that just here. Thanks for watching.